next season, percent chance Brian Kelly is coaching somewhere again versus percent chance he's a television analyst. And you can throw in like option C if you want to. Welcome to The Audible presented by Trader Joe's. I'm Stuart Mandel, joined as always by Bruce Feldman and Ralph Russo on our Tuesday morning edition. Guys, we may have to start delaying that Sunday podcast every week now. We talk about somebody's job being in jeopardy and then they get fired after we've already recorded the episode. This week, of course, it was Brian Kelly. So we are going to get into LSU and what went wrong there. Some more coaching carousel stuff because there's so many jobs open in general. And the idea of is there such a thing as a sure thing with coaches? And of course, our picks and our upset specials for next week. Since this happened on Sunday, guys, you and Bruce and Ralph, have been specifically, the two of you, doing a lot of reporting on what went down. Let me start with you, Bruce. What the heck happened Sunday?
Yeah, not long after I got off our podcast, I got a text from somebody saying that Joe Sloan, the offense coordinator at LSU, was going to get fired. And then it was like, has it happened yet? And it hadn't. And it was kind of in limbo. And then all of a sudden, when I talked to a few more people inside the LSU football building, it had become, well, now there's something more complicated as it relates to Brian Kelly, because there was a little bit of back and forth between him and the AD who had hired him, Scott Woodward. It started to get even messier. I don't want to say messy. It already was messy. It got messier, and then it escalated further and further. And at that point, I just remember thinking, all right, this could be a long day, which it was. I started talking to our editors about doing a story about where it stood in the afternoon. Multiple sources that I had talked to had said, you know what, they think he's coached his last game. There was no coming back from this. And that was where our story was. And then a few hours later, somebody had texted me saying, hey, they're going to have a team meeting now has been called for 8:00. And I thought at first I was like 8:00 tomorrow morning. He was like, no, 8:00 tonight. And he's done. Being he, yes, Brian Kelly's done. So that's how it really escalated. I don't think it was too big of a shock. Like, Stu, if I said to you, on Thursday, you think Brian Kelly's going to have this job by the end of the year? I think you wouldn't have been surprised if, like, they were trending in a bad direction. As we know, they were actually leading the game against A&M, but it felt fortunate. I mean, there's a block punt in there. There was a couple of, interceptions, but then all of a sudden they got blown out of the building. And here we are with Brian Kelly, year 4. Didn't come close to winning a national title. And I think when you look at the micro versus the macro, the biggest part of this is, everybody else wins a national title there. The closest he came in 4 years was he finished number 12. And that wasn't this year or last year. So I think it was kind of obvious it was heading in this direction. But now it's like, how do they handle the money? Is it going to be a $53 or $54 million payout? Or is there going to be some kind of $20 million settlement that he ends up taking? And there's a lot of TBD in there.
Yeah, just for a little more context, because Bruce definitely was killing it yesterday in terms of the reporting. Part of the issue with some of the staffing that has not worked out entirely well with Kelly is that he already flipped his staff a couple of years ago. And when he flipped that, the athletic director, Scott Woodward, had a hand in some of those flips, right? So it became a matter of, as Bruce sort of laid out, hey, BK, you got to fire your offensive coordinator. Okay, but I also want to make from Kelly, okay, I want to make another change and I want to get rid of one of your guys, right? To Scott Woodward. Now, that alone creates a weird dynamic, right? Like there were your guys, there was the AD's guys, and there was Kelly's guys, right? Because the staff became something of an amalgamation of guys that Kelly brought with him coming in there, sweeping everything out that was tied to Ed Orgeron. And then there was a pivot within the first couple of years of, well, maybe we cleaned a few too many guys out and we need a little more of the like Louisiana connection guys. And we need to put Frank Wilson in charge of recruiting, and we need to bring, this personnel guy in. So there was a strangeness over the last couple of years of the staff being sort of a combination of Kelly's guys and Scott Woodward's guys, which also, I think, helped bring this to a head and created, I think, to a certain degree, probably some of the underlying dysfunction there.
On top of it, though, this wasn't unique to Kelly and Woodward. Woodward had really pushed for Orgeron to hire Bo Pelini. Remember, Bo Pelini had done well as an LSU assistant, I think, before he was a head coach. That obviously was not a good fit the year he was a DC under Orgeron. That was a move that Woodward had pushed for. And so now we have this thing blowing up basically Sunday night, right? And moving forward, Frank Wilson is now the interim head coach. Joe Sloan eventually did get officially fired. Now I was told he was pretty much out of there on Sunday, but he got fired officially Monday morning. They are last in the SEC in rushing, as they were last year. I think one of the things you had alluded to, Ralph, is, at one point you had Mike Denbrock in there, and they had the most explosive offense in the country. Obviously it worked out great with Jaden Daniels. Mike Denbrock ends up going back to South Bend. He promotes Joe Sloan, who had been the quarterback coach, to be the OC. And things just were not working out. Stu, from your perspective on this, because obviously we've talked a lot about it offline, are you at all, like, when they hired Brian Kelly, what did you think was going to happen in Baton Rouge? And is this about the way you thought it was going to go?
The rare situation where my opinion of the coach and his... I thought when they hired him, wow, right? Like, I mean, Brian Kelly at that point had Notre Dame going pretty strong for 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. That was a big deal. And then that basketball speech happened maybe, a day later, 2 days later? That was the first, like... Oh.
When you say basketball speech, to clarify, it was at a basketball game with the family, or however he pronounced it.
Family.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, this is kind of a weird fit, isn't it? So that, I think combination of I think the whole thing was very curious. Like, he's leaving Notre Dame for that job, despite no ties, despite no evidence to suggest he can win a national championship. But okay, it's Brian Kelly's won a lot of games. The fit seemed weird. But he did, I think the only reason this kind of lasted as long as it did was he did have a good first season. In fact, a surprisingly good first season. He got Jaden Daniels. That was Jaden Daniels wasn't there already. He went and got him from ASU. It's like, oh, maybe this will work out. And then pretty quickly it was like, no. And I think a key part of it was he was disliked as a person. It wasn't just he's finishing, 12th in the country and not 4th or whatever, or they lost 4 games last year. It was like, nobody likes this guy here. And it's hard to get people to rally around the coach, the struggling coach, when that's the case. I guess what we'll never know, though, guys, is if this had played out a little bit differently. I mean, if they beat A&M, obviously, I think that carries him the rest of the season. But if it was just not quite that bad, if they had lost to A&M by 7 points, 10 points, does he at least get the chance to coach against Alabama? And then if he loses that, then he's done.
Maybe. I don't know. I think that they had worn pretty thin and were needing victories. Though spectacular fashion, everybody's cleared out in the third quarter, certainly doesn't help, right? It certainly doesn't help. But I think we were trending in this direction, maybe no matter what had come about on Saturday with Texas A&M. I will say also this, last year, Bruce and I combined on a story after he had his 3-game losing streak, or within his 3-game losing streak. that sort of said, like, here's why this isn't a great fit. Like, the way Brian Kelly likes to go about running a football program it's not just the family, it's not just the accent, it's not just the fact that he's from Massachusetts and he had coached in the Midwest most of his career. The way he went about being successful at Notre Dame was not necessarily something that was very transferable to LSU. And then it got muddled as they tried to course correct, as we talked about before. A couple of years in, now we try to course correct. And it left a big hole on the roster this year. Then they tried to spend a little more. No, we're getting in the game NIL. So it was just never, not just that it wasn't a great fit, but then to try to fix it on the fly was just not working out, especially at a place where the standards are so high. And we can also get into that, Stu, and Bruce, for that matter, about this idea of, like, you know, what are the standards here, and how are you ever going to satisfy your fans at a place like this, you know, to hire a coach when there's 1,000, there's going to be 20 openings. How are you going to possibly hire a coach, a replacement that's going to make people happy?
Yeah, we will talk about misplaced expectations and crowded coaching field here in a little bit. But real quick, guys, Bruce loves to do the percentage chances, you know, long-standing tradition here. So I'm going to fire one back first at Bruce and then Ralph. Next season, percent chance Brian Kelly is coaching somewhere again versus percent chance he's a television analyst. And you can throw in like option C if you want to.
I will say there's like a 19% chance that he will be coaching again. I just don't see the reason why the number's so low. First of all, he's 64, and I'm not saying that makes him unhireable, but at this stage of the game, does he want to be the next coach at Memphis if Ryan Silverfield gets a bigger job? I don't even know if Memphis would hire him at that point, to be honest. But like, I don't know on that front, you know, what the options are. Like, there's a scenario, I don't know if Michigan State would somehow open. It's not going well for Jonathan Smith. We know Kelly coached at Lake Superior State. We know he has a lake house up there. We know there's a former Cincinnati coach who did really well in East Lansing. Maybe that's one that might make a little more sense. But if I was guessing, I would say there's probably a better chance he's sitting on the desk next to our friend Nicole Auerbach at NBC.
There you go. That's funny because I kind of pegged James Franklin for that before you guys convinced me that to that specific network, before you convinced me he'll be a coach again next year.
So I'm going to raise those stakes a little bit, or raise those odds a little bit. I'm going to say there's probably a 35%, maybe even let's say a 40% chance that he coaches again, but only because my sense of it is, and we're kind of reading tea leaves and trying to read minds here, is he is not quite as motivated as James Franklin to get back in. I think James Franklin is very much a guy who is looking at like, hey, that didn't go well. I don't want it to end that way. I got a lot to prove.
He also doesn't golf. By the way, James Franklin doesn't golf. James Franklin is a hobbies guy. Brian Kelly plays a lot of golf.
Right. So I think, but I just think there are so many jobs that are going to be open that the dominoes could fall here, and that creates a path for a good one, or one that fits him better to get in there. So I think there's let's say a 40% chance that he's in another coaching job, but I would say there's less than 10% chance he's in TV, because I think if he's out of coaching, I think he's just playing golf.
Really?
Yeah.
He'd be so good at TV. He'd be, I feel like he and Franklin both would be really good on TV, but you know,
I don't think James wants to be in TV right now at all. He wants to coach.
It's hard to picture Brian Kelly just kind of fading out. You know, like Jimbo Fisher vanished off the face of the earth for about 2 years. Now he's back on the ACC network. It's hard for me to picture Brian Kelly just disappearing. He's been we've been writing about this guy for 20 years, at least when he first got to Cincinnati. It's hard to imagine, but we will keep tracking that.
Okay, Stu, since you're going in that direction, you're the one who asked the question. You give us the percent chance that he's coaching.
I'll say 30% chance coaching. I do like the Michigan State idea, Bruce. That seems like a job that might make sense for both parties. They just tried the, I guess, what would you say, Jonathan Smith, less charismatic, hadn't coached at a program quite that high profile. But like, no, Memphis, no, or anything quite like that. And then I'll go, contrary to what Ralph said, I'll go 50% TV, 20% golf course. Or maybe he gets back into politics, back to his original roots. Or if you saw that SEC Netflix show where he's going into his wine cellar and cracking open a good bottle, maybe he's a sommelier next year. We'll see. We're going to take a quick break and we get back. Sure thing, coaches.
All right. Now, there are all these jobs open, including LSU, probably at the top of the food chain. Stu, you wrote on Sunday night that there aren't really enough coaches to fill the void. So who do you think is the surest option out there?
Well, that's the problem, right? All of these, certainly the ones at the top of the ladder, right? LSU, Florida, Penn State, Florida State, if it comes open. There's no gray area. They want a coach who can win them a national championship. And as you guys survey the landscape, is there anybody out there that you'd say, if that guy takes the job, I think he will definitely win a national championship? There aren't any. And I think it's telling about this carousel that one of the guys who's like the most, like maybe LSU and Florida end up fighting over him, I don't know, is Lane Kiffin. And Lane Kiffin's a good coach. He's won 10 games, 3 seasons there at Ole Miss. That is not, as Ralph knows well, right? That is above the norm at Ole Miss. But he hasn't made the playoff. He had a great chance last year and blew it. All right, losing at home to Kentucky, losing at Florida with Jackson Dart, who's now a NFL starting quarterback, and a defense that I think was ranked in the top 5. So if he goes to Florida, is he going to lead them to a national championship? Maybe. Or maybe he goes 9-3 every year and it ends up being the latest Florida coach that gets canned. And I think you can go right on down the list. We've talked about Matt Rule with Penn State. By no means a sure thing to achieve the kind of the bar that they're looking at, or that Penn State expects their program to be at. I don't know. I would throw it back to you guys, and then I'll just say this: the guy that I said might be a sure thing is a guy that I don't think anybody's going to hire, Willie Fritz, because I love the guys who have coached at the lower levels and worked their way up and have won at multiple stops. Obviously, Kalen DeBoer fits that profile. Curt Cignetti most vividly. So, but Willie Fritz has done it from like JUCO all the way up. Now, an under the radar guy that I want to draw to your attention that has kind of done that, but is younger and maybe less established, is Bob Chesney, a Pennsylvania native. I know Pat Kraft is buddies. They go to the lake house or whatever with Matt Rule. But I feel like if we're going to get out, we talk about how are you ever going to get out of this cycle of huge buyouts? I bet he would come there from James Madison for not an insane contract. And if he does well, he's only 48. If he does well, he could be your coach for the next 20 years. Ralph?
But isn't that the whole problem, though, that we're just spinning the wheel here? We're just, okay, well.
No sure things.
There are no sure things. We talked about this last week, or actually we didn't. Scott Strickland talked about it, right? We played the clip about we want to win national championships at Florida. However, only 3 coaches have actually done that, and I'm not really sure anyone will want to come here, so we're just going to sort of project who might win a national championship.
Good luck.
And who could. And then you combine that with completely insane standards that have to be reached to the point where, hey, if you don't get it done in 3 years, if you don't actually win the national championship or at least, do some big things in the first 3 years, well, we're going to blow you out of there and get rid of you. Or even more so, Bruce, even if you don't necessarily, we're going to fire you in 3 years, within 2 years, our fans are going to be so angry and frustrated with you. It's going to pollute the waters. It's going to be so negative around our program. Then we're going to probably have to fire you after 2 or 3 years because our fans have zero patience. And that's not necessarily the fans' fault. They have been sold that, right, to a certain degree. Though, again, so it's this sort of weird, almost toxic mix of like expectations, inability to have, to sort of sort out who is good. And all of a sudden, like every 3 years, we're just going to hire a new coach.
The guy I think I would bet on, and look, Seth Emerson, our colleague, did an interesting column Sunday night, maybe it was Monday morning, about just basically take your shot kind of thing. Like, you're going to gamble. It doesn't have to be the guy who's the highest profile guy. Now, Seth, in writing this, because you look at, Kirby Smart hadn't been a proven head coach. It worked out great. You have Bob Stoops, never been a head coach. It worked out great at Oklahoma. There's plenty of examples of when the guy doesn't have experience. It learns on the job. It doesn't go great because they're learning on the job. And then it's the move up. Obviously, it didn't work out great for Billy Napier in Florida. The guy I would still bet on, again, it's not my money. The guy I would bet on if I was one of these SEC programs is Jon Sumrall. I just think he is extremely well relatable with players and staff. He has a kind of a dynamic presence to him. He's also played in the SEC and coached in the SEC. Now, having said that, I think it's a tough sell if you're Florida, because you just fired a guy who was not at a Power 5 and Power 4 conference and also came from the state of Louisiana where he was. And if you're LSU, I just don't think they're going to hire the coach from Tulane to take that job.
They didn't want to hire the coach from Louisiana Lafayette.
Right.
Because that was the deal with Napier, right? That Florida hired Napier because LSU was like, well, we're not hiring that guy.
Yeah, I get it. I'm just saying, like, if I was the AD, and I'm not, and I'm probably no better with my money than Scott Woodward is. And so, but that would be the guy I think I would go after. I like Stu's thought about Bob Chesney. He's impressive. Now, I don't know how it's going to scale up, but we don't know that with Sumrall. We also don't know, like, Eli's done a really good job at Mizzou. He's taken them from kind of to pretty good, and at times very good. But the leap we're talking about at these other two jobs, and certainly at Penn State too, is that it's not very good isn't good enough. It's the rare time when you use the word great. I mean, Brian Kelly didn't get fired because he was winning 9 and 10 games. He got fired because he couldn't make them great at all. And that's the thing that we're looking at. The bar is incredibly high. Now, the bar isn't, in a lot of ways, it's a lot easier, I think, to be the AD in this search process if you're at Oklahoma State, or if you're at a place where you could, like, oh yeah, I could hire GJ Kinney and I can look really smart. I could hire Ryan Silverfield or Alex Golish and I can look really smart. I may need to have a search again in 3 years, but like Eric Morris, I could hire him. It's not like people are going to go, no, you can't hire him here. No, I can hire him here, especially after we just had a guy who was head coach for 20 years. I can hire young and different, and we can build off that. I think it's when you're in this, again, you have a gobs of money, but you also have, like, the governor is involved in your hiring process. We don't even know if Scott Woodward is going to, at the end of the day, be running the hiring process or not by the time they get to the finish line. Who knows how that's going to play out? I mean, Florida, I feel like it's a little more of a path, and you have a formal search committee, a formal search group that's involved with it, but that's the tricky part still.
So, Stu, can I just throw something at you real quick? What about the idea of, because people are also like, well, hire your Dan Lanning, and Dan Lanning was literally off the, Kirby Smart staff. And I do wonder, considering how well Kirby did and considering how well Dan Lanning did, if you're sort of like, if you think to yourself as an AD, what if I dip back into that extended Saban tree? Like, who on is it? Glenn Schumann, right? Who's a defensive coordinator? Can I do something with that extended Saban tree, find somebody in that mix, an assistant? Ryan Day, as you pointed out in your column, Ryan Day was a coordinator. Kirby Smart was a coordinator. Do you think there's that? Would one of these big jobs go into the assistant, the coordinator pool, and try to say, like, I'm going to import the Alabama way or now the Georgia way into my program?
I'm glad you brought that up, Ralph, because and look, 1 year is not a big enough sample size. I realize that, but I had been of the opinion frankly, up until this weekend, because I hadn't really looked at it, that given how complex the Power 4 head coaching job has become, it just encompasses so much more now than coming up with a game plan, that you need to hire somebody that's an experienced head coach. It's too much for a coordinator to learn on the job. However, if we look at this week's AP poll and who is in the top 10, number 1, Ohio State, Ryan Day, hired as a coordinator. Mike Elko was a coordinator.
On the Ryan Day thing, let's not jump over that too quick. Ryan Day, keep in mind, he basically kept the best parts of it's a lot like Lincoln Riley. It's not the normal, hey, we're going to hire the coordinator. He got Mickey Marotti, who's running the strength and conditioning. He got Mark Pantoni, who's basically the GM. He kept Larry Johnson. There was a lot of stuff there. I'm not diminishing Ryan Day, but there's a lot of stuff that was baked in that made it different than your typical, we're gonna promote this guy or just take a hot coordinator.
And by that same measure, right, Dan Lanning walked into a pretty darn good program, right? That wasn't a rebuilding job. Marcus Freeman, kind of what you just said with Ryan Day. But then you go just to look a little bit further down. Brent Key was an assistant. He's now got them in the top 10. Clark Lee had never been a head coach before. They're in the top 10. So am I just totally wrong? And, I was trying to think why is that changing? Why is that even possible, right? A lot of these guys just became head coaches in this new era. And maybe it's the opposite of what I thought originally. And maybe now that you have these GMs who are empowered to basically build the roster, that a first-time head coach can concentrate more than maybe 5 years ago on the more, what you would say, tangible on-field recruiting, motivation, practice, like the things that are maybe more within their wheelhouse from when they were a coordinator.
I want to tee you up on something, Ralph. You don't know what's coming, but I feel like it's fair. It's a fair game.
All right. Fire one in.
Okay. You got a coordinator hire. Could be offense, could be defense. First time head coach. It's not LSU or Florida or Penn State, but any other job on the map. Who would you put your chips on the table for?
Oh, I don't know. So I'm a little hesitant because I feel like I'm endorsing people who I don't necessarily know super well. I just kind of know their resumes and a little bit about them. I have heard great things about Will Stein. Right.
I knew you were going to
heard a lot of good.
I knew you were going to say that.
And he's a good offensive coordinator. And I think offensive coordinator, listen, having a little bit of X's and O's juice is not a bad thing, to come to the table with, though, as all these former offensive coordinators ends up finding out, is that at some point you might have to give that up to be a really good head coach. Again, Schumann's name's been out there a lot with Georgia. What's the other Georgia? Says Todd Hartley. Todd, am I getting that?
Was a tight ends coach. The other name, who could be hot, who's a Georgia guy, Buster Faulkner, done a really good job as the OC
tremendous
Georgia
job.
Tech.
Yeah, done a tremendous job as OC at Georgia. So I do wonder if this a little bit is and not all these guys are super young, but it's a young man's game, and you end up getting a little bit of a bump. Okay, let me make this analogy. I love music, right? What they'll always there's a thing within music that like the first album is often the best album because they've been writing it for 10 years. Right? The bands, they've been grinding and they've been working on things. And that album is always amazing because they've got 10 years worth of stuff or 5 years worth of stuff. And then the second album is like, hey, man, you need to turn something around in a year and a half. So I do wonder if there is something to be said for that first bite at the apple. These assistant coaches come to it with all their new ideas and so energetic and enthusiastic and open-minded to I'm going to do this and I'm going to grab this. And maybe that's why the Kenny Dillinghams and the Dan Lannings and the Clark Lees do well, because they're coming at it with all these fresh ideas. And then whereas the guy like James Franklin or Brian Kelly are almost too well established and have bogged down in what they know. This is how we're successful. And maybe they haven't pivoted enough or changed enough or accommodated enough for evolution, right? To a certain degree.
That is That theory about the bands, I never heard that before. And now I'm like, as you were talking, I was drifting a little bit thinking about bands that fit that profile. That explains why Rivers Cuomo wrote one of the greatest albums of all time, the Blue Album, and then came back with Pinkerton. Bruce is just staring at me like, what? Well, I don't want to go much too longer on this, but if you want to talk coaching tree and coordinators, why wouldn't you try to look at Indiana's two coordinators, Brian Haynes and Mike Shanahan, who have been with Signetti, not forever, but were with Signetti at James Madison as well. Come bring in some of that Signetti magic, since he's not actually going to be taking one of the jobs. Bruce?
Hey, I was thinking of Mike Shanahan as well. I mean, extends the Dave Wannstedt coaching trees too, and we all like that.
I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah.
All right. Yet another episode that has been dominated by coaching carousel. For people who actually want to hear us talk about football games, we will get into our picks right after the break. All right, guys, now we are going to make our picks for the games this weekend. Let's just get a quick update on the standings, where Ralph is starting to gain on me. Last week, we all got Vanderbilt over Missouri and Ole Miss over Oklahoma. We all whiffed, obviously, on LSU. And Ralph hit on BYU over Iowa State. So he went 3-1. He is now 15-12. Bruce is 11-16. And I am 17-10. Oh, and we did pretty well in upsets last week, too. Ralph got Houston over ASU, which, frankly, I did not see that coming at all. And thank you, Wake Forest, 50-yard field goal at the gun to get SMU in my upset pick. All right, guys, let's start in Austin, where Vandy, the hottest team in college football, Ralph is still there as we're recording. Vandy at Texas. The Longhorns are a 2.5-point favorite. Worth noting, Arch Manning is in concussion protocol. Ralph, you're the Vandy expert in this group. Are they going to pull off the road upset?
Boy, I almost feel bad not taking them at this point. I kind of feel like I've anchored down. Literally, I've anchored down in Nashville, doing some extra reporting on these guys, and it's hard not to be impressed with like everything that's going on here. I'll stick. This is not necessarily, it's maybe a little bit more of a heart pick than a head pick. Not that I'm rooting for Vandy, but the story is great. I think we need to have like Texas out of this playoff race. It's just like they haven't really been playoff worthy the last couple of weeks. So I'll take Vandy to pull up what would be a mild upset, essentially.
I'm with Ralph. I'm going to go with the mild upset. I'm going to take Vandy. Still believing big on Pavia. Arch looked pretty good until he got banged up in there, and whether he's going to play or not, I just think I'm going to ride with Clark Lee. Stu, is it 3 across the board?
I mean, I think for his sake, it would be better if he can play, because, I mean, they don't seem to have a drop-off when he goes out of the game, so he might get Wally pipped. No, I'm going to go with Texas against maybe my better judgment because of something Ralph said. They refuse to go away. Like, they don't even look like a top 25 team to me, but every week they pull it out against one of the worst teams in the conference and move up even a little bit more in the rankings. So I think they're just going to keep dragging this out. I will take the Horns to cover the 2.5. I was pleasantly surprised to see that game day is going to a Big 12 game, a Cincinnati Bearcats game at that. Cincinnati, who is on a 7-game win streak, is at Utah, who treated the Colorado Buffs like they were a Division III team, frankly. Big spread on this one, Ralph. Utah, 7.5. What do you got?
Okay, so I'm a little torn because the Bearcats have been my sort of like sneaky Big 12 team all year that I sort of pegged as like this could be the surprise team. However, my beloved power rankings and numbers love Utah. So I'm going to sort of go with the computers here and say that they know something and Vegas knows something about this huge spread, which looks a little off, but I'm going to take Utah to cover it. I feel like Utah has been a bit of a bully. When they get on top of someone, they really push it.
I'm going to go with Brendan Sorsby and the Bearcats. I just think the spread is a little too big. Utah probably will still win, but I don't think they'll win by that much.
I think, by the way, Ralph, you're absolutely right. The computers love Utah. They also really love Texas Tech. So for people who think, the Big 12 stinks, the computers say otherwise about those two teams. Too big for me. 7.5, too big for me. I will take the Bearcats. Now we move to Knoxville. The Vols are 3.5-point favorites over Oklahoma at home. Can I actually take this one real quick?
Yeah.
I was doing some research for a mailbag question. Do you know how terrible Tennessee's resume is, guys? Like, they're in the top 15, and their best win is over 4-4 Arkansas, who fired their coach in overtime. Otherwise, it is a bunch of losing teams. They're getting a lot of credit for having played Georgia close. All of which to say, I'll take the Sooners. I think Tennessee might be the most overrated team, frankly, in the top 25. What do you think, Ralph?
So I have heard that too from people that when I put out my ballot, right? So I tend to get a lot of feedback. You know that? I didn't really get, you get a lot of feedback. You get a lot of opinions. So I'm with you. I just think this is a super close kind of toss-up game. And so I'll take the Sooners and I'll take the points.
All right, I'm going to be the dissenter. I'm going to go with the Vols. I didn't like how OU looked last week against Ole Miss. Maybe they're trending. I don't want to say trending in the wrong direction, but the schedule is pretty rough. I feel like the Vols will get up for this. They have a big play offense. Josh Heupel, obviously, big connections to Boomer Sooner. Give me the Vols.
Can I just tell you one quick thing though? If things go really south in Norman, we could be having another discussion about another coach down the stretch here. You realize I'm just preparing y'all. Like, if they lose Tennessee, and they still have to play Alabama, they still have to play LSU. The corpse of LSU rises up. I'm just saying, it's been that kind of year, guys.
I agree with you to some extent. I kind of saw that coming when they lost to Texas, but at this point, just sit it out, Oklahoma. Like, don't throw yourself into this mix as well. Wait a year for all these other blue bloods to get their guy and see where we stand then. And last but not least, we have USC, a touchdown favorite at Nebraska, which surprises me a little bit. You know what else surprised me? Nebraska did not get a single vote in the AP Top 25 this week. I don't think they're world beaters by any means. They needed a they needed a very questionable no call. It should have been defensive holding on the Northwestern receiver. They should have gotten a first down there and continued their possible game-tying drive. Anyway, Ralph, do the Trojans cover that touchdown spread in Lincoln?
You sound like a Northwestern fan. I think
I watched.
I think you're
I don't see much of them, but I watched the end of that one.
I will take the home team and the points. I think USC's pretty good, but it just seems like this is a big number to deal with on the road for USC, where, Lincoln Riley's, they haven't been nearly as good on the road. So I'll take the points in Nebraska.
No, you're sugarcoating. They haven't been good at all on the road. This is like, how much confidence do I have in either? I'm fresh from it's only been 10 days since I watched Minnesota maul Nebraska. And then, by the way, Minnesota came around the next week and got smashed. And here's USC off a bye week after kind of getting embarrassed on defense by Notre Dame. Oh man, I think I'm going to go with the Trojans to show up and have a really big performance on both sides of the ball. They at least have been very good at times. It hasn't been on the road, but I think this will be, I'll probably regret this, but I think it's going to be a breakthrough a little bit for them on the road. I think they get it. And I think they cover the spread.
They're definitely a better team than Nebraska, but I just cannot put my faith in Lincoln Riley on the road. The Maryland, the Minnesota, they're all still swirling around in my brain. Illinois. So I will take Nebraska to cover.
Winner of this is the Big Ten team that we start talking about as a possible playoff team, whether they deserve it or not. I'm just saying.
So they play Iowa.
The one that comes out of here is the one that we sort of circle as maybe this is the fourth Big Ten playoff team.
Above Iowa?
It could be Iowa too. Could be Iowa as well.
Brett Yormark is going to find out where we live and storm our houses if we start talking about Nebraska as a fourth Big Ten over a second Big 12 team. But you're not wrong.
I'm good with two Big 12 teams, by the way.
That will definitely enter the conversation. Upset picks. What do you got, Ralph?
I knew you were going to come to me first, and I don't know if I'm really ready for this. I'm going to go with, I don't feel great about this one, but it was one of these, my first instinct was to go to this game, and then I looked into it a little more, and I was like, that's maybe not a great pick. I'm going to take Kansas State at home to upset Texas Tech, which would be throw the Big 12 into total turmoil and certainly make people in Lubbock. Again, we're talking about coaching changes.
Oh no, we're going to have to talk.
Oh boy, they will not be happy with Joey McGuire if they do not make the Big 12 championship game.
And we know they can pay a buyout.
But I also think Kansas State is starting to find itself a little bit. The fact that they blew out Kansas last week, I think is
no Dylan Edwards. They will not have Dylan Edwards back for this game. And you know who's back for this game? Baron Morton for Texas Tech.
Oh, Ralph doesn't think he's very good.
Well, I'm hesitant on Baron Morton. I will just say, listen, again, first instinct, I'll throw down Kansas State. Last week you guys tried to talk me off of Houston, and I was right. So I'm sticking with Kansas State. I also love upsets in the Big 12 because, frankly, anything could happen in the Big 12.
I think those are the voices in your head. We did not try to talk you off Houston. I think that was from your rock and roll days that you were hearing something about us talking off Houston.
I was definitely thought he might be crazy. K-State is a 5.5 point underdog in that one. You do need them to win outright for the upset special. Bruce, what do you have?
I have Stu's favorite team, the North Carolina Tar Heels. They are going to get back in the win column for a first time in a long time. And that would be against Syracuse. Underdog. Syracuse is at home. They're also on a 4-game losing streak. We obviously really like Fran Brown, but I think North Carolina's due. They've gotten snake bit the last 2 games in a row, both by fumbles near the end zone. I think they're going to finally break through and get a win.
Well, I will stay in the ACC. I think I've picked an ACC upset about 15 times in a row. Cal, which suffered a brutal overtime loss at Virginia Tech, is coming back home to host Virginia. I can't remember if we talked about it on the podcast or off, but Ralph and I have definitely talked about how we think Virginia is due for a fall. Very fortunate. 3 overtime wins in one season, plus a 2-point win over Washington State that was decided on a safety and a poor decision on a fair catch by the Washington State player there. So Cal's a 4-point home underdog to a top 15, in theory, Virginia team. I will take the Bears. We will see how everybody does when we come back next week. That's it for our show today. Every episode of The Audible is on YouTube at Audible Show. We will be back on Thursday, where we will answer your mailbag questions and where somebody will get a $12 Trader Joe's gift card. Be sure to send your emails to theaudiblepod@gmail.com. We will see you then.